Welcome to episode 10 of the Liberty Mastermind podcast. I'm Ox, along with Pat Leo and Captain Jack. And our special guest tonight, the one, the only, Jake Robinson. Tonight we'll be discussing money-saving hacks, anarchism, voluntarism, Mead, and who knows what else. But before we get rolling, a big thank you to Serge for the email feedback about how he likes the show so much that he feels like he's sitting right here with us, sipping a drink. Also, a big thank you for the 5-star rating and review from Mitch G 2010, who says, love where this is going. And Miguelin, who says, entertaining, insightful info, profit-yielding info. Thanks so much for the rating and review.
Our special guest tonight is Jake Robinson. After living in the UK for about 3.5 years running a business, Jake came home in 2007, just before the crash of '08. When he got back in 2007, he discovered things may not have been the same and started to feel like something was going to happen. He began his journey to become prepared, and he stumbled across Jack Spriko's The Survival Podcast and got hooked, as I think we all have. Since becoming well-known and an important part of the Survival Podcast community, he has pursued many homestead interests, including beekeeping, mead, brewing kombucha, pressure canning, as well as dry canning, and has taught a number of these skills to others, including Ox. He bought a 5-acre, 100-year-old schoolhouse and has learned woodworking skills to do the restoration work. He's also sought out other like-minded individuals in his community and has made a journey from Tea Party organizer to an advocate of voluntarism. Jake never stops learning and is always looking to extend his skills, independence, and applying permaculture to the edges of society in pursuit of liberty. I must say, Jake, your passion for this is contagious. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I'm honored, and I'm actually kind of humbled that you guys would have me on your podcast.
We're excited. Thanks so much for being here, Jake.
Yeah. So what's been going on? Tell us a little bit about your life, other than what I just said.
You pretty much summed it up. We can just end the interview right now. That's all there is to it.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for listening.
No, I was living in England, and I was over there for about 3.5 years, and you kind of tune out about what's going on in the U.S. I had no clue that this run-up to this '08 crash was coming. Now, I know in hindsight, listening to Jack's podcast, he was telling people, get out, get out, get out. And, I came home in '07, and right after that, the crash happened. And was in financial services, and I still am, but I'm just not active in it. And I, it's always you were always taught, buy and hold. Hey, it's going to come back. Don't sell. This time it was different. I just felt something was different. I didn't feel good about telling someone they should be putting their money into the market when I was having some trust issues with the dollar. And I started doing some research and figured out that there's something happening that's different than what happened in the past. And of course, we know we're on this slow toilet bowl type of, around and around. We're going down very slowly and kind of in slow motion, but it is going down. We're having an issue with currency. And I would talk to guys at these mutual fund companies that would come in and talk to us at our office, and they would talk to us about how great their mutual fund was and this and that. But I'd always raise my hand and say, well, what about the dollar? I said, what if the dollar, gets hammered? Or what if China decouples the dollar from petro or some other? They never could answer my question. They looked at me like a cow looking at a new gate. and I never could get an answer. And I thought, these guys are in their bubble. Their world seems to make sense. But I'm looking outside the bubble, and I'm like, wow, this bubble's going to pop. So I started doing research and like you guys did, and I probably came across Jack Spirko, the Survival Podcast. I didn't get immediately hooked. I listened to shows every now and then, specific shows. I never listened to the shows though, the Q&A shows where he would say, "Oh, today we're going to talk about whether 12 gauge or 20 gauge is the best. We're going to talk about beekeeping. Somebody's got a question," and I would never listen to those. I thought that sounds boring as hell. After I became more of a listener, I realized that those are some of the best shows that he does, and I learned so much from those shows. Yeah. And in the meantime, I'm a super conservative Republican coming back from England. I immediately got involved in local politics to try to see if I could do something with the party, and then the Tea Party thing came along 2 weeks before this big Tea Party protest was supposed to happen, which was tax day in 2009, I believe, April 15th. I was just going to go to Nashville and go to the big Tea Party rally that was being organized, and I got to thinking to myself, well, why don't we why am I going to Nashville? We ought to be doing our own Tea Party right here in Murfreesboro, and we got about 100,000 people that live in our city. Oh, and wow. So I picked up the phone and called a couple people and said, yeah, so-and-so is thinking about doing that. They're meeting at a cafe tomorrow. So 5 of us showed up 2 weeks before this, started organizing. 2 weeks later, we had 3,000 people at the town square in Murfreesboro, and we were all, yelling and screaming, having a good time. And it was more about, hey, you stupid politicians, why don't you listen to us? Quit taxing us, quit blowing our money, and get things right. After doing that for several years, I figured out that protests don't do anything. They don't do it unless you beat up somebody, or unless you're on the left, maybe you can get something done. But I eventually started pulling back from national politics. I will say local politics, you can make a difference. And local stuff like your county commission, I think the county commission has probably more power to affect your wallet than almost any other branch of government, but it's also the most boring and the most unattended and observed by the average citizen. Yep. Even after that, I finally got to the point where I was like, you know what? Jack Spirko is right. I need to just worry about me and get shit done. I don't know if I can say that, by the way.
Sure, let her rip.
Say what you want.
Okay. And so, that's what I started doing. I became a beekeeper. When I got back from England, my wife had bought a house on her own, and I walked out the door when I first got back. It was in the spring, and the front yard was full of clover. I walked out the front door, and I was standing there on the front porch, and like, something's not right here. What am I missing? And I realized that normally I would hear the buzz of honeybees all over the yard. I mean, I grew up seeing that. There wasn't one single honeybee in my front yard. There was some bumblebees and a couple of wasps. So I started doing some research and found out that the honeybee population is under duress and has pulled back quite a bit. And there's something called colony collapse disorder that was going on. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I need to become a beekeeper. It took me 5. That's what I thought. I thought I need to help the bees. I mean, like save the whales. I got to save the bees, and maybe have be a beekeeper and maybe help the population spread. But it took me 5 years to pull the trigger. I don't know why, but 5 years later, one day I said, "Oh, I think I better go to this beekeeping 101 course," and I got started.
Jake? Did you learn that from the Bee Whisperer, Michael Jordan, or is it someone else?
I didn't. No, it was local guys.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even meet Michael until one of the workshops after I'd been a beekeeper for a couple of years. Okay. So it was better that way because I could really take in what he's saying. I already had a kind of a head start. But we're pretty good friends now, and that dude is the Bee Whisperer, that's for sure. But long story short, I got into beekeeping, and when I talked about one of the things I think I mentioned to you guys about ways to save money, I quickly realized that to expand the apiary was costly. Every time you get a new hive, you're looking at about $300 a pop for all the woodenware to set up the hive, and then you got to buy some bees. And so I realized that every now and then people would get swarms of bees, like in a tree or in a house or in a wall or something like that. And I decided I was going to start rescuing bees. And so the first job I ever did, I volunteered to do it for free after this lady had asked 17 other beekeepers, and they all passed on it. So what does that tell you? That was a dumb mistake on me. I thought, I'll just do it for free. I'll get the experience. She had bees in her garage wall. And when I figured out where they were about waist high inside the wall, all the way up to the top plate in between two studs. Wow. And I told her, I'm going to have to cut open your wall. It's drywall, but it'd be easy to fix. That's fine. Just do that. So I started I built me a bee vacuum to suck bees into a container, and it worked great. It just takes a long time. So anyway, I started about 9:00 on a Saturday morning, and about 9:00 that night, she came out and I said, I understand why 17 beekeepers turned you down. It took me all day. And then I had to come back the next day for about another 3 hours to suck all those bees up and get them all out. Wow. And she felt sorry for me. She paid me $250. Anyway, she goes, I can't let you do this for free. So then I realized, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to charge something. And I basically just tell people, hey, look, I'll rescue your bees, but I got to have at least minimum $300 so that I can buy the hive to put the bees in so they can, flourish. Mm-hmm. So every now and then I'll do a bee rescue like that, but I have to, I really have to investigate it because I can't afford to do a 2-day extraction like that. I would charge more for that. But what it did do is it allowed me to expand my apiary one hive at a time without having to spend cash. So that was just one of the ways I saved money around the homestead. I learned how to do other skills. This particular county is super conservative. My wife actually ran for, she was asked to run by the Republican Party to run for the Register of Deeds office. And she didn't know anything about campaigning. I didn't know anything about it either. But basically she got swept in the office because of this Tea Party movement. So she won in 2010 and became the first Republican ever to hold that office since the county was formed in 1804 or 1803. It's always been Democrat. So it's been a big change for our county, and our county has turned red. And there's a lot of people like me that they may be, they may not have discovered anarchy or voluntarism, but they have discovered, hey, we want smaller government. We want government that listens to the people. And a lot of those people got together, and we used to meet once a month, and somebody would teach how to pressure can. Somebody else would teach how to build a raised bed garden, and somebody would teach something different, how to make.
Hey, Jake, was that through the county, or did you guys, I'm sorry, I missed it. Did you guys do that on your own, or they kind of sponsored it?
No, we did that on our own. I'm just saying that there's just a lot of conservative people that live here. It was Tea Party people. I mean, Glenn Beck, he at one point started a 9/12 movement, which was basically after 9/11. He said, how you felt on 9/12, where you didn't have an enemy, everybody was pulling together. I mean, that's the kind of that's the kind of people we need to have, is people that think like we did on 9/12. We put aside our partisan politics and focused on how can we heal from this, how can we get better, and that kind of thing. That 9/12 movement sparked a lot of people going into how to become self-reliant and how to store food and all the stuff that Jack talks about on this podcast. So over a period of about a couple of years, there's a lot of workshops and things that went on. I learned a lot of skills, and I just started pursuing some of those things.
And you taught at the most recent workshop as well.
True that.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I discovered Sous Vide cooking, which is the most awesome way to cook a steak. Jack discovered it right after I discovered it, and we both had the same thought. I immediately sent in and said, hey, I'd like to teach this. And he said, well, I was going to do that. I said, hey, man, I'll be happy to be your assistant if you want to do it together. If not, no big deal. But he said, all right, we'll do that. We'll do it together. But he basically made me do it. And I just didn't want to take his stage away, but he was teaching some other stuff anyway. So yeah, sous vide is just a cool way. If you don't know anything about it, a great channel is Sous Vide Everything on YouTube. This guy's from Brazil, and he's an ardent sous vide master, and he puts up all these experiments. Should you use salt or not on your steak, or should you use butter or not, and what's the best? He does every kind of meat under the sun, from a full pork belly to picanha steaks, which he says is the best in the world. If you want to learn how to do sous vide, go to that channel, watch that for a few times, and then you can get a sous vide cooker or one of the devices that you use to cook, which means under pressure, by the way. Sous vide means under vacuum. I'm sorry. Basically, you're cooking, slow cooking at a low temperature, and man, it makes you can precision cook your steak to the temperature you like. If you like it 129 degrees, medium rare, you can set that joker on 129, and your steak is going to come out 129. I don't care if you cook it 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. It's going to be 129 when you put it on your plate.
And you just need a little finishing, maybe on the grill or like pan sear it.
I pan sear it mostly with a cast iron skillet. Put a little butter in and put some other oil in. This guy on his YouTube channel, he always uses a searing torch. And after watching him do it a few times, I think I'm going to try that. I think that's a good idea as well.
So for people listening, it's putting the item that you want to cook inside a vacuum seal bag and then placing that bag in a water bath. So that's kind of the idea. The water surrounds what you're cooking, and you control the temperature of the water. So you're controlling the temperature of what you're cooking on all sides while it's in the bag. It's very fascinating.
And the interesting part about that is that it used to be reserved to high-end chefs and high-end restaurants, because sous vide equipment was several $1,000s to be able to do it. But now they've come out with consumer versions that you can get for $100 to $150 that, sit in the edge of a pot or clamp to an edge of a pot. Very easy to do. You can set the timer, walk away from it. Heck, you can set the thing up to you can put your meat in your bag in your container with ice water with your unit sitting there. Go to work, and then at 2:00 you can pull up your phone, tell it through Wi-Fi to start cooking. By the time you get home, your meal's ready.
Oh wow!
So
that's fascinating. Cool. Yeah, it's kind of similar to that crock pot idea where you can set the timer on the crock pot, but this is man, I was drooling when I was watching you present on that earlier this year.
So
you got to do it, man. It's awesome.
I assume that the vacuum seal bag is a plastic bag. Is that correct?
You can use the vacuum sealer bag, so you can use a Ziploc. You just need to get the air out of it.
Uh-huh. Are you concerned about plastics leaching into the meats?
No, absolutely not. That's one of Jack Spriko's answers, which is, come on, dude. It's not, the plastic itself is not supposed to be, it doesn't have the crap in it that, what is it, PSA, or what is it? I forget what they call them. But no, it's not gonna hurt the meat at all.
Okay. Cool.
Going back, maybe let's back up a sec and kind of go back to the guest intro. Jake, you're one of those scary anarchists. So maybe like, what does anarchy actually mean to you, and what is voluntarism that we heard earlier in the guest intro?
Okay. I've been to probably more of Jack Spriko's homestead workshops than any other person alive. I've been to at least 7, I think. I'm serious. And I don't know if you remember, but he had an intern, Josiah Wallingford.
Yeah, I remember.
And okay, so some of the earlier workshops was when Josiah was around. We would set up late at night drinking beer in the garage. And we had a big, long-drawn conversation about anarchy. And keep in mind, when I came to Jack, I was still this guy who was plugged into politics, conservative Republican,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't gone down that path yet. At that time, I think Jack was still calling himself a menarchist, so he wasn't full blown yet.
Mm-hmm.
But Josiah was. And so when you're sitting around, you hear the word anarchy, the average person is going to think about those Antifa people with mask on and all dressed in black at the G20 meetings, throwing, trash cans through Starbucks windows and lighting cars on fire and that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, that's what that's what everybody thinks anarchy is. So if you go to people and talk about anarchy, that's what they're going to think of. But anarchy defined literally means without rulers. So if you talk to somebody, say, hey, I don't like the state. I don't like having a government making me do things. I don't like rules and regulations that really don't make sense. I don't know why do I have to go to a 16-hour class to learn how to braid hair. Do I really need a license to do that?
Exactly.
I literally heard that today. Some guy on the radio, that's what they do up in Seattle somewhere. So I don't like all that stuff. I want to be my own man and run my own life. So the less government we have, the better. Well, anarchy means without rulers. If you have no rulers, then they can't put this crap on you. However, if you were to challenge your friend who's still in that paradigm where they think anarchy's bad and the state's okay, they're going to say, well, how are you going to get around with no rulers? You'd be people fighting and shooting. No, they didn't say no rules, brother. They said no rulers.
Exactly.
You can still have rules. You can still have rules through voluntary contracts and voluntary community groups who get together and say, we're going to do that. In fact, if you like communism, hey, you can have a commune. You can have communism within anarchy as long as you don't try to make me do it. Exactly. I'm not interested in communism. But if you want to go over there on your own and start your own little commune and have communism going on, as long as you don't impact me, you can operate that way. But most people can't see past the word anarchy, and it's a trigger word. So that's why the word voluntarism has kind of popped up, because just saying the word, people almost know what that means. Oh, you're going to volunteer for something. Well, what it means is I'm volunteering to have interactions with other people based on mutually agreeable rules that we sort out on our own. And if somebody violates the rules, then we're going to have an arbitrator over here, a third party, private, situation, or we're going to hire a private police force. It's not going to be the state. And even though it sounds like there's still some rules that you might not want to live by, if you don't like it, then move or disassociate yourself from that group. You don't have to be a part of that group. It's probably never going to happen in real life in our lifetime, but that idea of if I could volunteer with a bunch of other people, and that's basically what I'm doing here, is you build your own community. I make mead, I brew kombucha, I can do pressure can, I can do dry canning and other stuff. Maybe I got a few woodworking skills. And if you can do stuff that I don't know how to do, if you grow crops that I don't grow, we can barter, we can trade. If you have primitive woodworking skills that I don't know, maybe I could get you to finish some of my work for me. We can work together in a situation where if the grid goes down per se, or the end of the world as we know it happens, which I don't think is going to happen, then you can have that group of people that you've already established relationships with. It's kind of like the Amish, Hey, if the grid went down, they wouldn't know it. They'll just keep on.
They wouldn't know it.
They wouldn't even know it, And so they would just keep doing their thing. And if they can make it on their own, but keep in mind they help each other build barns and stuff, right? So they don't do it alone. So that's voluntarism. Really is a way to introduce people to the concept of anarchy without blowing them out of the water by saying, "Hey, I'm an anarchist." Oh yeah, you're crazy. I don't want to. So anyway, that's I get a lot of that from Jack and Josiah. At the time I went to one of the earlier workshops, I wasn't open to anarchy that much. To me, it was still kind of, yeah, you can't have a society without rules. Come on, man. Or rulers. Come on. So we sat through about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was relentless. You know how I am, Ox. I like to ask a lot of questions. I just peppered him. What about this? What about this? What about that? And he just kept answering. I'm like, damn, that's a pretty good answer. Damn, I don't really can't say anything about that. Well, damn, that makes sense. And before, I think at the next day, Jack said, so what do you think? I said, well, I think I'm an anarchist.
So Jake, speaking of using the words the right way, like anarchy being a trigger word and having those long talks at 4 a.m. and being licensed, I have a short story that'll hit all 3 of those targets. So I don't know if you'll remember, but Jack Spriko's podcast, I actually did a write-in comment that while I was in my last deployment with the military, I was in Guantanamo Bay. And it was about 4 a.m., and me and 3 of my buddies were on the same little kind of fire team. And we were talking politics one night, and I said, this is going to be scary.
This is a good story, by the way. I remember this.
Yeah, so I said on the show, I said, basically, yeah, sure, I call myself an anarchist, and the first thing they said was, how people are going to be killing each other. And I said, would you kill other people? And they said, no. And I said, okay, would your parents go killing people? And they said, no. And I said, we just kind of went down that line. They had a couple aha moments, but then basically they still kind of felt uncomfortable, so they said, oh, you're crazy. So 24 hours later, with the same 3 buddies, at 4 a.m. the next morning, we're out working in uniform, doing our thing, and we're out in the middle of nowhere by ourselves. And they say, wow, this Pat, he's nuts. He believes in all this crazy government stuff. And I said, well, maybe I just didn't explain myself right. And they said, okay, well, try again, weirdo. And I said, hurting people is wrong. And they went, yeah. And I said, stealing from people is wrong. And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, here we go. Pitch number 3, strike number 3. I said, all activities between consenting adults should be voluntary. And they said, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of a voluntarist. Do you have any more questions? And they were like, oh my God, of course we do. So that happened. And then probably a couple days after that talk, we had a kind of Facebook group on the island on Guantanamo Bay, on the military base only. And I remember one night I was out in front of my little personal dwelling there, kind of in the cell block. We had a bunch of little trailers that we all lived in. So I'm out on the sidewalk in front of my trailer, and me and a couple of my buddies are drinking beer, and we're chopping up some fruit and vegetables that we bought from the only grocery store on the island. So we're chopping up tomatoes, chopping up onions, chopping up garlic, putting them all in a pot with some olive oil and some lime juice and mixing them up. So I'm like, man, this salsa is really good. My buddy's like, yeah, it is. And occasionally people will buy and sell food items throughout the island. Like if you're busy or if you're having a party, you say, hey, is anyone on the island? In the Facebook group, you put out a post. You say, hey, can anyone make a cake for my sister's birthday? Oh, yeah, sure. So I took a picture of my salsa, and I'm drunk. And I said, anybody on the island want some badass salsa? Let me know. So within 10 minutes, someone said, hey, how much for a pot? And I said, well, I'm kind of drunk. I'll have to get back to you with an estimate for a price. So the next person says, excuse me, are you licensed and regulated to prepare and sell food products?
Oh, my God.
And I said to myself, okay, I don't think that people with a shiny badge are special. But let's be honest, we're in one of the most restrictive environments on the planet. We're in one of the most heavily guarded military installations on the planet. No one's coming in that doesn't want to be here. No one's on this Facebook group that doesn't want to be here. And technically, we're not even in a state of the United States. We're not in a city. We're not in a county. And we're on U.S. property, but we're not even in the U.S. So I don't know what kind of regulation he thought I was looking for. Like, which state would regulate me? I don't know. So I thought about it for a minute, and I was heated. I was so hot, and I was like, you know what? Let me give him a good anarchy answer here. So I thought about it, and I got out my little phone, and I started to reply to his message, and I said, so his first comment was, are you licensed and regulated to sell and prepare food products? So I said, are you licensed and registered to ask me that dumbass question? And it's been about 7 or 8 months, and I still haven't heard a reply. So hopefully he was a little enlightened by that.
He's probably trying to get a license.
He wants to regulate you through the state of tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, Jake, you mentioned some different skills, and you've also taught quite a bit of them. Sous vide cooking and some other things. Do you have any? How do you save money on the homestead? Do you have any other money saving hacks besides the beekeeping idea?
Well, I'm always looking for free materials, building materials, free stuff. And of course, Craigslist has a free category. Have you guys ever taken a look at it?
No.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I built 2 large chicken coops out of free material from Craigslist.
Bingo.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's it. That's how I do it. Craigslist is a great way to find. There's a free category. Now, most of it is pallets, wood pallets, free firewood, old couches. Those are like the ones you see all the time. But every now and then, somebody puts something up there. You're like, holy shit, that's some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Craigslist free is you can't just sit around and watch it all the time. You can't. You got to go do stuff, and you can't be checking your phone every 3 minutes. So what I do is I use a service called IFTTT, which stands for if this, then that.
Yeah, if
this happens, then that happens. It's basically a website that connects a lot of different apps. Imagine connecting Craigslist to an email notification. So if I go in and do a search for building materials or lumber or wood, I could put in that search in Craigslist, take that URL, paste it into the quote unquote recipe. They call them recipes, and IFTTT that says if this anything with these keywords in the free category pop up, you email me right now and tell me that it's there. So I get email notifications that say, hey, here's a guy who has a free shed for somebody to come get it. I've got a free shed that I just
great.
I've probably seen 30 or 40 free sheds in the past year. Most of them I don't want because just the way they're built or whatever. But every now and then you see these great, barn shed on a. Anyway, I've got an 8x8 with a little gable shed that's it's already wired for electricity, and I got to it first. The email comes through IFTTT. You're going to get that email. Probably you're going to be one of the first people to see that ad that just came up on Craigslist that says free shed. You have to act quick because there's other people looking too. But if you happen to be the first one, the guy says, sure, you can have the shed. So I borrowed my buddy's truck. I took my 12-foot trailer. This guy had already had the shed laying on its side, so I pulled my trailer up. He hooked up his truck with a chain, pulled the trailer up, the shed up on top of my trailer. We strapped it down with some super big strap.
Tie-down straps.
Ratchet
straps.
I drove carefully, got home. I took my 4-wheeler and hooked it up, pulled it off the trailer the same way, fell on its side. I put some blocks down. I got on the other side, hooked my 4-wheeler up. And this is how you do stuff on your own. I had to do it by myself. I don't really have a lot of people that go, hey, I'll come help you set up your shed. And I set my blocks there and got them just right. Got my 4-wheeler, hooked up a chain to it and pulled it back up onto the blocks, and I'm good to go. And
wow.
I did that. I already had a shed sitting out there, so this is an extra shed. I decided, though, to think ahead just a little bit. It's kind of like permaculture, can you function stack? And instead of just sitting that shed next to my other shed, I set it about 10 feet off from it, in line. And then now I've built a little covered spot there. I basically connected the sheds with just a roof. So now I have a drive-through for my tractor. I can pull my tractor in one end, come out the other. And so it's really a third shelter by putting the two together. So getting stuff on if you use IFTTT and do Craigslist free, then I'm looking for stuff like I brew Mead and Kombucha. I'm always looking for gallon jugs. I don't know, gallon glass jugs. They're not cheap. They're expensive. Just to buy one empty new is like $12.
Yeah.
So you either have to buy something in it, and then, like apple juice or something. And every now and then, I found 16 of them a lady had for free. She's kept these gallon glass apple juice with a little hook, finger hook on it.
Yeah.
Perfect for a secondary secondary brewing, fermentation container from my Mead. And it didn't cost me anything but to drive over there. I've got all kind of stuff, lumber out the wazoo. Tin. Tin is one of my keywords that I'm looking for from a tin roof. And what you'll see is you'll get a notification. Hey, free tin, free lumber. I'm tearing down this old barn or this old shed. Come get what you want. I'll go over to my trailer and load up with some sheets of tin. That's what I built a lean-to this about a couple months ago. I've got about some 10-foot cedar posts that came out of a barn right down the road for free. I got all my tin for free. I think I bought 4 2x4s to stud it out for my roof, for my joists, and I just built it off the backside of my big shed. And now I've got another shelter that I call it. That's where I keep all my building lumber that I get. So you never can have. I wound up getting 80 fence posts. I saw this guy tearing down a fence with a backhoe, a big white picket fence around this big old house. And so I pulled in. I said, "Hey, what are you going to do with all this?" He said, "Well, I'm just going to burn it." I said, "Do you mind if I take any of it?" And he said, "Yeah, I don't care." And I said, "Well, then don't even." He was pushing it up in big piles. I said, "Don't even push up in a pile. Just leave it where you drop it. I'll come back here with my trailer." So I loaded up my trailer with my 4-wheeler, drove out on the property, took my 4-wheeler off, hooked my trailer to the 4-wheeler, drove down the fence line, put all the fence posts in there. These are like 8-inch fence posts, big old things.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get a big stack of those, I drove my 4-wheeler up on top of them, strapped it down, drove it home, unloaded it, went and got me another load. I got 80 fence posts for nothing. And then all of the cross pieces for free. I got stacks of lumber.
Nice.
You can get tons of stuff. There's a lot of different stuff you'll see on Craigslist free. You just have to keep thinking of the keywords you want to keep watching. Like pressure canners. I convert pressure canning over to dry canning. I don't know if you know what dry canner is. Ox does.
Mm-hmm.
Dry canner is basically you hook a vacuum pump to a pressure canner, and you can put mason jars of dry foods like rice or beans or sugar or salt or whatever it might be. You want to keep it long term. You put them in there. It sucks all the air out. And you got a regular mason jar with a lid on it, and then you open it back up, and air rushes back in and seals the caps. So now you've got a vacuum sealed mason jar full of whatever you want, say rice. Instead of having a 5-gallon bucket of rice that's Mylar, sealed, and it's got nitrogen in it, and once you open it, you got 5 gallons of rice. What are you going to do? You're going to reseal it? No, you're not. And so it defeats the purpose. But if you can get these half-gallon mason jars, big mason jars, and put your rice in there, now you've got 25-year shelf life, vacuum-sealed rice in your mason jars. When you open one, you got a half-gallon of rice that you're going to use over the next couple of months cooking. It depends on whether you're paleo or not. But you get the picture. You don't have to use it. You don't have to open it up and then have to reseal it. You open it up and you work through it and use it, and then the rest of your stuff is long term. So I've been looking for pressure canners. I found some all American canners. The nice ones, the ones that are like $200 or $300. Mm-hmm. I just saw one sell on Craigslist for $45. That's a steal. And you can buy one of those or a regular pressure canner, convert it to a dry canner, and get double duty. For me, when I dehydrate vegetables to store, or if I make, you don't really need this for that, but if you make biltong, or jerky. You could put that in there and extend the life, but I don't think you really need that for biltong. But still, it's a great way to preserve food, and it's cheap and easy to build. That's one of the classes I taught at one of Jack's workshops.
You did that, and like the sous vide cooking, we all wanted to run out and grab both of those devices.
Oh yeah, at the first workshop I went to, I traded on the Barter Blanket. And if you guys know what a Barter Blanket is, at Jack's place on Friday, you throw a blanket next to the fire. People put stuff on the blanket, and then people barter for it. People put, a guy puts a gun down, somebody else puts silver down, somebody puts something else down, and they strike a deal. Well, I struck a deal with Josiah and traded my dry canner that I brought for a Ruger 1022 with a foldable stock and it was pretty pimped out. It looked like it should be banned. And so, anyway, I got a gun for my dry canner. I thought that was cool as hell.
Oh wow, a guy can never have too many 22s. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, but one of the mistakes, I'll never sell a gun again unless it's defective or unless I just hate it, because that's one of the few regrets I have in life is selling a couple of my guns.
Yep, I don't sell guns.
Well, at the very last one, the one you were at, Pat, I traded and it wasn't even on the blanket because the guy knew I had a dry canner. He came up to me before we started trading and said, "Hey, I got a shotgun. I'll trade you." I got a 12-gauge shotgun.
What?
The last one.
That's right.
Yeah.
I got a really beautiful bottle of, I think, some peach. I don't know if it was wine or schnapps. Yeah, schnapps the one guy was selling.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think it was $20 for a bottle of schnapps, and I bought like 2 or 3 of them, and only one of them made it home.
Yeah, I got some apple. I got some moonshine that Mike Vertrees made. It was awesome. I don't know if I should say that. Now they know who this guy is that makes moonshine.
That's Mike Crabtree. No,
that's it.
Crabtree.
123 Main Street is his address.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's legal to make your own moonshine. You just can't sell it.
I think different states have different regulations on it. But I also did some research, and I could not for the life of me find the last time that was prosecuted anywhere in the country.
Yeah. I mean, hell, they got a show on it, Moonshiners, Mm-hmm. How can they make a daggone show without somebody getting arrested?
It's like, I think...
Because they're all licensed.
I could tell you, with all the people in my life, like my family and my friends and my coworkers, past and present, that are all in law enforcement and military, and even doing the research I did on the internet, not a single person I have ever talked to has ever even heard of a moonshine arrest. And so it's even less prevalent than marijuana arrests, and those are going way down. I can't tell you how many times either me by myself or me and my partners have walked up to people smoking weed and said, "Hey, we're looking for a bad guy. Have you seen him?" And they go, "Oh, shit." And I go, "Listen, don't worry about it. Have you seen the guy wearing the purple shirt?" And they go, "No." And I go, "All right, have a good night."
Well, you're a cool cop. You're a voluntarist cop.
I am, and it's difficult, but that's don't get me down that rabbit hole. This isn't the show for that.
Well, it definitely is a conundrum for you, right? To be a cop and be a voluntarist.
It is tough. I make my little victories where I can, and I still haven't had that moment where I've had to sell my soul yet. And the good news is, on my last deployment with the military, where they dragged me back, I've saved enough money that I now have a year's salary in the bank. So the second that they say, "Hey, go sell your soul and do that thing you don't agree with," I'll go, "Nah, I quit." So I'm in a pretty good position right now.
Good for you.
That is a pretty good position. To kind of flesh out that idea about using IFTTT a little more, what about Google Alerts, Jake? Is there anything that Google Alerts can tie into?
I don't really find products or materials with that. What I normally do is, when I told you earlier that local government can have more impact, there for a while you heard Jack say, "I don't want any part of voting or anything to do with anything that has to do with government." He's kind of changed his tune. If you've heard him lately, he's mentioned things like local government, if there's something that happens locally. I think I've gotten inside his head on this. I said, "Look, dude, you're in an unregulated unincorporated county, and you think you're in, nirvana, because all they do is say get a get a septic tank permit. After that, you don't have any codes. There's nothing that you have to deal with. In my county, that's not true. In my county, if you have less than 5 acres and you're out in the county and you buy a house like I just did, you can only have one outbuilding, and that one outbuilding can only be 75% of the square footage of your house. So if you just happen to buy a little bitty house, you got to have a little bitty shed to go with it. And if you want a shed to put your four-wheeler in, another shed to put your beekeeping equipment in, another shed for your RV or whatever, you can't do that. They've locked you out with the rules and regulations here. And if you don't think that kind of mission creep on bureaucratic bullshit is not going to come your way, it's eventually going to get to you, Jack Spriko. If you listen to this podcast, it's going to come to your county, and it's going to come because those guys in the state always want more power, and they always want more rules and regulations. They want to control you. Right now, there's counties out there that don't have many rules and regulations, but as the bigger counties like I'm in, or bigger populated counties, put these rules and regulations in place, they become the forerunners. They become the catalyst for the other counties to say, oh, they've done it, maybe we should do that. And eventually that stuff is going to creep out there. So I really think I put Google alerts in on my county. I put Rutherford County in Google alerts, and then I see everything that happens in Rutherford County. If they're going to raise my taxes on real estate, I may go down to the county commission meeting and bitch about it. That's the one thing you can do in government, is the more local it is, the more impact an individual or a group of people. Hell, we had, I don't know if you know anything about Agenda 21. I can't go down that rabbit hole, but we were going to pass something called the 2035 plan for Rutherford County, which was, oh my God, I'll have to give you my favorite paragraph out of this plan. Basically, it said this, that even though we believe that private property rights are important in Rutherford County, we also have to make sure that we are aware of future, future generations and their rights as well. So I'm like, what in the hell is a future generation or a potential right? So you can't have this kind of bullshit. You got to fight it. And I organized about 100 people at a community meeting, and we exposed it. And I went through it. I went about an hour presentation and connected all the dots and showed them, hey, this is what's going to happen if we pass this. And we had enough people that raised enough hell that we got the county engineer and the planning department to back off. The linchpin to make this thing work was that they were going to change the density. They're going to say, hey, instead of putting 3 houses on an acre, you're only going to be able to put 1 house on an acre. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but what that does is they were basically going to force the developers to look at where they're building, and they had basically drawn a line around certain cities and areas in our county and said, in here you can build more houses on an acre. Out here, though, we want this to be green space, and we don't want to do that. So you basically had a false economy, and you were basically going to rip some farmers off that, sooner or later they want to stop being a farmer, and their kids don't want to take over, and they want to sell some of their land to a developer, and they build a subdivision, and they retire on it. Basically, you're going to put those guys out of business, because the developer, if he's looking at 2 plots of land, they're both 100 acres, and 100 acres he can build 300 houses, and the other one he's going to build 100. What do you think is going to happen? Mm-hmm. I know that I went kind of in the weeds on this, but we fought that, and we raised hell about it. And because there was just a few of us, maybe about 100, I built a Facebook page and I put some emails out and whatever. We got that changed, and they backed off of it, and it basically gutted that whole plan. There was some nasty shit in that plan. And if you're not paying attention to what's going on in your own county or your city government, I also have an alert from Murfreesboro Murfreesboro City. And so I'm just keeping my finger on the pulse. And most of the time there's nothing happening. But every now and then something comes through and, whoa, wait a minute. And I've got a few friends that are more politically active than I am that I can get on the phone and say, hey, Brian, did you hear about this? Oh, no, I didn't. Dude, we got to do something. And then and maybe pass it off to somebody else as well to run with it. So Google Alerts can, you might want to have your own name in Google Alerts to find out if something gets published out there.
So it's keyword?
It's just keyword. Yeah, it's just a keyword. You go into Google Alerts, you put a keyword and you put your name in. Anytime your name hits a blog or the papers or anything, it pops up. And I do that for my wife because she's a registered deed. She's an elected official. Okay. And even though it's the most unsexiest, public office of all time, we just want to know what's going on. But back to IFTTT, a couple of key recipes. One recipe is, hey, if anybody posts my home address on Craigslist, let me know. And you know why they do that, right? You ever heard of somebody? Because some people get pissed off at somebody. They post their address and say, hey, we're having a free yard sale. Everything's free. Just come get it. So the guy comes home and everything in his whole house has been, people are carting off and loading on trucks and stuff because his ex-wife posted his address and said, we're having a moving sale. We're done. And and so you can use this IFTTT to put this recipe in and alert you when your address gets published on Craigslist.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
There's a lot of other things you can do with IFTTT. If you have strong internet, you have a smart home, you can put in these smart lights and controllers and thermostats and all that crap and control it through IFTTT remotely from your house. There's a lot of things you can do with IFTTT. There's tons of apps that you can cobble together and do some automation and make your life a little bit easier.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you could use Craigslist as a sort of a revenge tool. That's fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of out there in terms of away from the city. How do you do stuff by yourself with no help from anyone, or seemingly no help from anyone?
Well, I built my lean-to shed by myself, and I didn't have one person lay a hand on any of that. So I had to set, 5 cedar posts, and so you do things like you get the cheap scaffolding. Look for it on Craigslist. If not, Harbor Freight's got one for about $200. You got to if you have a scaffold, a few ladders, and some tools, you can get a lot done. I mean, I had to set the headers on the header across the top of my cedar post. And so I'm not, you got a big 2x6, it's 16 foot long. It's pretty heavy. And normally you'd have 2 people or somebody, you'd set it up there. But you can do it yourself. You can lift up one end, lean your 2x6 up on top of your scaffold, maybe at an angle, put it on top of your cedar post and screw one screw through it to set it. Get on the other end, reposition, and then you can lift that thing up. It's kind of like a lever, and you lift it up and set it on the other end, and you can do stuff like that. You can put things together like that might normally take extra people. If you think through it, there's always a way to do that kind of stuff single-handedly. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but you have to think through what you're doing ahead of time.
Right.
Talk to your buddies that are experts in. If you got how to do something, YouTube's a big skill builder for me. I'm always I broke the door handle off my mother-in-law's car, and that's the first thing I did was how to replace a door handle on a Toyota Matrix. Boom, there's a guy showing you 5-minute and 14-second video showing you exactly how to do it with all the steps. Okay, I can do that myself. I ordered it on rockauto.com for $17, and I saved a ton of money by not taking it to the dealership.
Exactly.
So
I'm trying to use YouTube at the moment to figure out why the hell my dishwasher is not draining the water from the bottom. So that's a great reminder.
I've already done it. I can tell you. I've already done that. I can tell you what it is. You've got grease in your. I've already done that, man. I literally have a video on my channel. You go to it where I found the hose was clogged. Well, there's two different things. One time the hose was clogged up with grease, and it'll get clogged up with grease, and it might cause your dishwasher not to drain. It'll back up, maybe flood your kitchen. So you take that hose off and take a clothes hanger, clean it out. The other thing I had a piece of cloth. I don't know how it got in there, but it got sucked up into the. And both times I was able to look on YouTube and find something similar, and then I figured it out, and I went ahead and made a video on it because I thought, well, here's a different way to do it, or here's something very similar. I'm making videos like that all the time as well.
Well, I'm gonna have to go back and find that one.
Well, I've got a VW Jetta like Jack used to have. I had it before he did, but and I have a Volkswagen Golf diesel, and there's lots of stuff you can do on your own. I've got several videos that have thousands of views on, how to solve a problem on a Jetta, how to do things, how to hack things, how to solve your problem without going to a dealership. So YouTube's a big time skill builder, and of course everybody knows that. But don't be afraid to go on YouTube and put in anything, because probably somebody's already figured out how to do it.
Definitely. You mentioned something earlier. I got one more question before we get to the sort of liberty question round. You mentioned Mead earlier. Tell us, it wasn't like maybe 2 years ago that I actually learned what Mead is. So maybe you could tell us what it is. And is it really the nectar of the gods?
Well, it can vary from the nectar of the gods to something akin to Blue Nun, that cheap wine that the winos buy for dirt cheap. It depends on how you make it. Jack likes his mead dry, like a dry red wine, and Michael, the bee whisperer, Michael Jordan, he likes his super sweet. And between those two, you're going to find something you like. And that's the cool thing about mead. It's super easy to make. Mead is made out of honey. And if you're a beekeeper, besides eating honey and selling honey and making stuff out of wax, mead's a pretty cool thing to make. Especially, it's a great barter item. Alcohol is always a great barter item.
Yeah.
But you can, in fact, Jack, at one of the workshops, it wasn't planned. We had about a 30-minute break between the next speaker. Michael Jordan just stuck his head up and said, "Hey guys, anyone want to know how to make mead with a coffee pot in 30 minutes or less?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he got up and showed us how he made a single gallon batch of mead using a coffee pot.
What?
And it was the damnedest thing. And Jack looked at that and said, "Holy cow, I've been brewing beer for 20 years and I've made mead in the past, but I just never want to fool with it because it's so damn hard when you're making a 5-gallon batch of something. Everything has to be sterilized, and you're making a big batch, and if you don't like what it is, you got 5 gallons that you don't like. But 1-gallon batches that you can make running water through a coffee pot, and you can do it. You can literally set a batch of mead up in 15 minutes or less, and have it fermenting and then ready to clear and bottle in as quick as 14 days, depending on what kind of mead you make."
Oh my God!
So the ingredients. So you mentioned. I heard water. There's also honey.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, all right. Here's what you do. You go to the store and you buy a gallon of water, because we know that water, that container is already sterilized. So you take that gallon of water and a gallon of water, you're going to use about 2 pounds to 3 pounds of honey, depending on how sweet or dry you like. You're going to fill up your coffee pot with water out of the container, run it through, pour that other water out into some other container. So now you got an empty gallon jug. You take your 2 pounds of honey and you pour into the jug. You take your hot water and now here's the key: you don't want that hot water to get over 160 degrees, maybe 140. So really, you would have a digital thermometer inside your kettle, and you watch it. And when the water hits 140, take it off the kettle. It's not boiling yet. Pour that hot water in there. Put the cap back on the jug of water and shake the hell out of it to mix and dissolve the honey. Then you can pour more water in and top it up to about 3/4. That'll cool it off some. And you're going to wait till that thing cools down to below 110 degrees, usually around 90 degrees. And you're going to pitch your yeast. You're going to put your yeast in. And there's 2 types of yeast that Jack uses, a combination that, and you just need to go watch his YouTube channel because he's done a whole series of videos on how to do this because he's perfected it. So it's 2 little packets of yeast you get on Amazon. They're dirt cheap. You pour those 2 packets in and stir it up a little bit, and then you might put some an additional what's called yeast food or yeast booster. It's yeast nutrient, like a 2 teaspoon of that stuff in there. And then you're done. Really, you can fill it on up with water and put a balloon over the top of it. However, you probably want to add some adjuncts. What they call adjuncts would be like fruit. So you could put in like a half of an orange and a half of a lemon and just kind of squeeze them and stuff them through the hole. And that will make what's called, Michael Jordan calls a summer shanty. It's a great tasting mead. It's not going to taste like orange or lemon or whatever. It's just going to have an essence of it. And again, with making mead, you can make so many different types of mead. You can use raspberries or blackberries or pears. Michael Jordan has made mead with chocolate, orange, and he's made mead from Mountain Dew. Wow. I mean, you literally can, the sky's the limit. But you can do a 1 gallon jug of it. So when you put that rubber balloon over the top of it, it's going to expand once that yeast goes to work, starts eating on the sugar, the honey, and the fruit. It's going to start pooping out alcohol and carbon dioxide, and so that balloon is going to expand and expand. So you got something going. You're going to see it bubbling. You just set it on your counter and let it do that until it stops bubbling, and finally the balloon is going to go limp, and it's done its job. So at that point, you're going to pour off that. That's your primary container. You're going to pour it or transfer it into a secondary because all of that fruit and crap is going to settle to the bottom, and they call that lees. That's your solids. So you pour it off into a second container and let it sit and let it clear. And when it gets real clear, then you can bottle it and drink it. And Jack's got a combination of 3 different herbs that you can add to almost any mead: elderberry, heather, and I can't remember the other one, but again, you can find out about it. That thing will kick its ass. It'll put a mead into high gear literally from the time you put your stuff in and put it on your counter. Within 30 minutes, it'll start producing bubbles, which is almost unheard of. It usually takes 24 hours or more to start seeing the bubbling fermentation happen. These 3 herbs, I don't know what they do. They super damn charge the thing. It starts percolating within 30 minutes. That type of mead can be cleared and bottled in about 14 days, which is freaking incredible. That's fast. Most meads will take you 4 to 6 weeks, maybe longer. And then you can age them, and they can change the taste and the profile of your mead. So sometimes you'll get a mead that's tastes a little strong. You don't really like it. Okay, put it on the shelf and try it in 6 months. It may taste better by then. Real simple to make these meads.
See, everyone, when you talked about the dry canning and the sous vide cooking, everyone was like, man, we need to run out and grab those devices. And now everyone's going to need to go out and make their own batch of mead. Well done.
Go to Jack's YouTube channel, and he's got a whole series where he did a mead of the week. And each week each time he did it, you'd learn a little bit more about the intricacies of doing it. It's not difficult at all. And the thing is, if you make a mistake, no big deal. You can't die from it because it's made of alcohol. It's going to kill anything that's bad in there, so it's going to be drinkable. You just might not taste good. So he didn't make a lot of it. You made a gallon. So if you don't like that, make another one next week, and you're going to get over it eventually.
And I think Michael Jordan did a mead per week for this entire year, right?
He sure did. Yeah, he started doing that. Jack kind of trailed off after he did about 5 or 6 or 8 weeks worth. And I think he made enough mead for himself. He's okay. I'm kind of done with this. And then Michael rolled out his whole year, and he's had every week he's had a different style of mead. It's the same kind of thing, but I think Jack took Michael's method and perfected it and really tweaked it out. You know how Jack is. He's a freaking genius. He figured out how to do it better and faster and smarter and quicker and et cetera. He's like the Japanese. He made it quicker and better and smaller. But Michael and then Michael, I think, has adapted some of Jack's ideas, and then he went through a whole year of it. So you're right. Either one of those two, you can learn how to make mead right there on your kitchen. You can buy. I'll say this: if you're not a beekeeper, just find a local beekeeper and find some local honey. Go down to, there's usually somewhere in your town that sells local honey. We have a nursery that sells, plants and trees, et cetera, and they carry local honey. And where maybe almost nowhere else you can find it, you can almost always find it there. If you can't find it there, go to Costco, and they sell a good honey that's not, you don't get anything that's commercialized, comes from China, et cetera. Don't get these stupid, the typical honey you get in the grocery store. Make sure it says some kind of local or raw honey. It's not been processed. And you can buy a couple of, I think it's like 5 pounds of honey and 2 jugs together. It was reasonable. It seemed like it was $14 or $18 or something like that. It's cheap enough that once you make it, you're like, wow, this is a lot cheaper than going and buying beer at the store.
Mm-hmm. And then you can also barter it, like you said earlier.
Oh, yeah. It's a great conversation piece as well. People come over, hey, have a sip of this. Well, what the hell is that?
Another nice thing about making your own alcohol is, what did Jack Spriko say? Something like befriend and then behold, or some sort of short 2 or 3 word phrase. I like to make a little bit of moonshine here and there, and then I sell it to deputy friends of mine. But I think it would be really difficult for them to go into someone's house and go, maybe they're not supposed to be making that moonshine. And I think if they had just bought my moonshine that I made for them, it might be a little morally difficult for them to go, let me
maybe they would say, what are you selling this for?
Yeah.
Get my wallet out.
It's almost a step before jury nullification. You can call it law enforcement nullification.
Yeah, pre-jury nullification.
Good.
idea.
Yeah, but like you share these things. It's like buying a gun, a Second Amendment thing. If you take someone that's not a gun owner or a gun lover and you take them to the range, well, now guns are their problem too. So when you attack guns, you're attacking their guns. And when you attack, either liquor or moonshine or beer or mead, if someone comes to attack your mead and you've been selling it to all your friends, now it's not someone else's problem, it's your problem individually too. So you get people involved in this stuff to show them that, maybe because it's a law doesn't mean that it is just.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. I don't know if you guys want to veer off on some other stuff. One of the things that I always recommend if you're trying to figure out how to, do a side hustle, make money, start your own small business. And even if all you do is start something that doesn't ever make money, you will come out ahead with the tax benefits of starting your own business, especially mileage. So I used to be in financial services teaching people how to handle their money. And that's one of the things that I would recommend to them. I said, look, you're making, $70,000 over here on your W-2 income. If you just start a little part-time business, buying and selling used power tools, if all you did was buy them and never sold them, then you have a loss. You could write all that off and reduce your W-2 income. And instead of you, normally getting let's say you got a $2,000 tax refund, which you shouldn't be getting a refund anyway. Maybe all of a sudden you get a $7,000 tax refund because you've reduced your taxable income by the quote unquote losses of your business. Mileage is the coolest thing ever. You guys ever get to write off your mileage?
Mm-mm.
No.
I work for the government, so it's kind of a tricky answer.
Okay. You guys both should start your own some kind of small business, and then whenever you travel, you get to keep track of your mileage, and then at the end of the year, you write that off. So mileage, I think right now is like 58 cents a mile or something like that. So imagine if you drive 10,000 miles on your business, that's like $5,800 that you get to write off your income. It's incredible. It's one of the best tax or best income tax reducers of all time is the mileage. I used to joke with people. I said, well, heck, I drive 100 miles to do business, and it's 58 cents a mile. What is that? 58. I got paid $58 to do that 100. I said, man, I might as well move away, move to the next city over here, so I could drive further. And I promise you, with a Jetta, a VW Jetta that gets 48 miles a gallon, or a Golf that gets 55 miles a gallon, diesel, yeah, you can make some money on mileage. You come out ahead on that. So that's just a tip. Think about starting your own part-time business of anything, even if you don't. And I think the way it works, you got to make profit. You can lose money 3 out of 5 years or something like that. So it's on the same business. You can always start a different business, but I would try to make money on it. But if you don't, it doesn't matter. You can still write off all the stuff that you use cell phones, you have computers and printer paper and ink and all that. All of that can be attributed to your business. And then all of a sudden, when we go to a workshop down at Jack Spriko's and drive all the way down there from Tennessee, and I were to, sit down and talk to you about my business and potentially do a deal with you, even if we didn't do a deal, I can say, hey, that was a business trip. I went down there to meet somebody to talk about business. It's a business trip. I can write the whole thing off. Crazy.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's just one of the other things that I had down in my notes that I thought that's too good to pass up. You gotta consider starting a small business just for the tax savings alone, on top of the money that you can make by becoming successful at it.
Well, I'll give a quick plug. So since you're on the Liberty Mastermind podcast, let me tell you what our mastermind group is. So the three of us, me and Ox and Jack, we all kind of have our own side gigs that we're working on right now. We're all fully employed full-time by other people, but we're also building our own kind of side hustles. So the three of us, me and Ox, met through TSP, and Ox and Jack, you guys met through, I can't remember.
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
So the three of us said, hey, if we're all friends and we're all kind of trying to build our side gigs, Ox actually said, hey, there's this kind of mastermind idea where the three of us, we collaborate, we update each other, we hold each other accountable, we help each other with our businesses, we give each other advice, we check on each other to make sure we're getting shit done. And that's what our mastermind is. And for that, we're doing a podcast as a group, but we each also have our own side hustles. So we are in the very beginning stages of our side hustles, which starting with our own websites, our own blogs, and our own kind of path. But the podcast that we're on right now is where we're all kind of coming together to talk about all the big picture stuff.
Yeah, the podcast came about because we were like, man, this is good shit. We should be recording this. Every time
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, every time we got together, it just got to be that more and more. And we're like, all right, let's just do a podcast.
I don't know if you're going to monetize your podcast, but you could technically say, okay, let's create this as a small business or organize it as a small business. Then all your equipment, I don't know if you buy equipment and any of your overhead or whatever that has anything to do with a podcast, your hosting and et cetera, you could all write that off. I don't know if it'd be worth it or not, but I like the idea of having a mastermind group for sure. I mean, I definitely tap into other people's that are smarter than me, like Jack, some of you guys. I'm always trying to learn from anybody I can. And, I like to ask questions, Ox, because there's Jack has a Jake 2-question rule. I'm only allowed to ask any presenter 2 questions. If he doesn't stop me, I'll just ask. And I'll be like a daggum crossing attorney or an investigative reporter. And I drive everybody crazy on that. But
well, I don't know about drive everybody crazy, but you certainly, Jack Spriko might not be a big fan of all the questions. Some of us appreciate them, that's for sure.
Well, I live rent free in Jack's head. Anytime you hear him talking about me on the podcast, I'm in his head because he's having to say something. But I think he's proud of me for seeing my journey from being a conservative Republican to a full-on anarchist, and it had a lot to do with him and his influence. And I do appreciate everything he's done. And the guy's the dude is really a genius. I mean, the guy's at first I just thought that's a smart ass guy who thinks he knows everything, and actually, even though he might come across as smart ass, he actually does know everything. If he doesn't know it, he figures it out.
I think this is a good point to move into our second segment here. So we did our interview, and our second segment will be our Liberty questions. Jack, you want to take over?
Sure thing. All right, so number 1, Jake, what do you see as the biggest influence to your liberty or lifestyle, positive and or negative?
Positive is just being around other people who think similar thoughts, like-minded individuals, plugging into podcasts. For example, besides Jack's podcast, he's my number 1 podcast, but I listen to one called Anarchy. And the guy lives, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. The guy, okay. Some of the stuff on there is kind of crazy and kind of wacky, but I like to listen to it. It's enjoyable nonetheless. And the guy always invites somebody who, quote unquote, is an anarchist. And that's his first question. How did you become an anarchist? And you hear their journey. And some of them are activists. Some of them are just people like Jack that are getting stuff done. And so that's a great podcast, and it influences me in that direction. And your question, again, restate the question because I don't want to leave out the whole answer.
Well, what's your biggest influence to liberty in your lifestyle?
Okay, yeah, I'd have to say just being exposed to other people who already have blazed that trail. Excellent. But it's also being exposed to the paradigm that you come from. And so, yes, I still can't help but want to listen to what, the headline news are. But it makes me laugh. Gives me good information, good fodder for good memes. and it makes it, and I see it and say, wow, it refocuses what I'm supposed to be doing by just opposing it to what's going on in the real world. And it's getting crazy out there.
Yeah.
But that's
awesome.
Yeah, that's
okay. So number 2, when life is challenging, your character building days, what do you do to bring mental relaxation, insight, and clarity to yourself?
Drink Mead.
Yeah. Dude, Jake, when you did that recipe for that summer shanty for Mead, I thought to myself, that is so much better than the Crown and Coke that I am currently guzzling down.
Yeah, I can't say that I have a repeatable, profile or something I do on a regular basis to try to get out of that. But, I hang around with some cool people. I got a guy who lives down the street that's a professional caver. And we go out and explore and look for and there are caves all over the daggone place here where I live.
Nice.
Doing stuff like that where you're not always just working or just working on your homestead or your goals for your homestead. you got to have fun every now and then.
Right.
And that's one of the ways I have fun. But then again, I've got a sinkhole in my backyard. I thought it was a sinkhole. Well, actually, it's a cave. And we are still trying to get that thing to open up and get down to the main floor of a big cave system in here. And if it has water down there, there's a chance I'm going to turn that into a geothermal heating and cooling for my house. I'm going to go right down in that cave. So you never know what's going to happen from being exposed to other people. But that guy, he came over and explored it. And he says, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. He said, you ever thought about geothermal? I said, no, not really. He says, you ought to. And it got me thinking. And now we're best friends and we go out caving together. So I think if that's the question is, do something that you like. And, of course, I don't get down that often. I don't generally get burned out, or I'm not saying that I never have a bad day, but when shit happens, basically you gotta how fast you can shake it off is going to determine your results. And it's kind of like that movie The Lion King, where the monkey hits the lion over the head with a stick, and he goes, "Ow, what'd you do that for?" He says, "It doesn't matter. It's in the past." He hits him again, and he goes, "Damn, ow, what'd you do that for?" He goes, "It doesn't matter. It's in the past." In other words, hey, it's already happened. Quit bitching about it and get on with life.
Right.
I like that.
Great philosophy. All right, number 3. We often say this to each other, start every day happy. So what do you do to start your day happy?
Wow. What do you do? Give me some ideas.
How do you start on the right foot? How do you get on the right side of the bed?
Right. So me personally, I'll get up and I'll listen to the Quote of the Day show. It's a podcast. It's usually 8 to 10 minutes, and it's just kind of inspirational stuff, just kind of motivational, get you in the right mood, just kind of get your day started right. That's what I do.
I do like to read, and I will say that if I do something right off the bat in the morning, I'm usually, I'm looking at something that I need to learn on YouTube or something like that. So I don't really listen to I've done all the motivational stuff in the past. I've been in sales. I've done all that stuff. And really, at the end of the day, I really don't think somebody else can motivate you. You have to motivate yourself. But then again, I can listen to someone that tells their story about how. The thing that jacks me up the most is when I hear somebody else tell their rags to riches success story, how they became successful in spite of trials and tribulations. That is motivating to me.
Absolutely.
In respect that, wow. But I don't necessarily have a routine like that where I listen to somebody do that every day. Maybe I need to.
All right, number 4. Do you have any recommended reading, YouTubing, or podcasting for liberty or for specific topics that you talked about today?
Well, besides the podcast Anarchism, I like cryptocurrency, so I've listened. There is a podcast on cryptocurrency that is actually a consortium of podcasters. It's not just one guy or one guy.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay, you can, if you look for it, you can find it. I don't know the name of it now, but I listened to that solid for about 2 years, and I really got my head around cryptocurrency.
Right.
And I was so thankful that about a year and a half ago, I bought 2 Bitcoins around $400. And today, Bitcoin's over $4,300 or something like that.
Yep.
And that's a 10x. But I probably wouldn't have done that if I hadn't listened to the podcast, because if you say Bitcoin, it's worse than anarchy. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I try to start explaining to somebody what Bitcoin is compared to anarchy, and it's even worse. Like, they eyes glaze over. No, that's just, that's funny money. There's no way that you're having any value. And I'm telling you, cryptocurrency is probably going to be one of the greatest liberators for liberty of all time, the blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely.
The blockchain to be used as a decentralization tool for almost any kind of service. For example, Uber has the threat of government coming in and shutting them down. And in every city they've opened up in, they're having fights with with union taxi cab drivers in the city, putting some type of, extra regulation on Uber, or banning it, or taxing it, or fining them, or et cetera. So they have that threat that the government could come walk through their door and shut them down and put a padlock on their door. Well, if you release an app through the blockchain, I think Jack's talked about this, but I've been thinking about this for a long time. If somebody offers an Uber-style app and place it on the blockchain, now you've got this app that people can use it just like Uber, but nobody owns it. Nobody runs it.
Yep.
Nobody can control it. The government can't come in and shut down the service because it's everywhere and it's nowhere. Yep. And that's the beauty of the blockchain, is being able to spread the service out through hundreds of thousands of computers around the world that host the service. And it's just like the internet. It's just an internet for the internet. And the blockchain makes it where you don't have to trust a third party. You can, again, it's the essence of voluntarism. You can make a contract voluntarily with somebody else, exchange value for value, and be able to exchange that value with a cryptocurrency, and do it anywhere in the world with anybody you want to.
Yeah.
And I believe that eventually it could come around to bite us. It could be that the government starts their own cryptocurrency and makes it where they control it. I don't think they'll ever get away with it. But at the same time, I think that the genie's out of the bottle. If they knew what Bitcoin was already like now, they would have shut it down from the get-go. They would have done something to try to take care of it. They can't do that.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Library? LBRY?
I think I've heard of it. I'm not sure what it is.
It's a decentralized website that's kind of like YouTube. So there's no regulations, there's no banning, we're going to flag your podcast because you used copyrighted intro music for 3 seconds. None of that stuff. It's a pretty cool thing. You might want to check that out.
Well, cool. I definitely will. I'm always cycling through different types of podcasts. Homegrown with Nick Ferguson is still a good one. I've listened to some other anarchy podcasts, like Logical Anarchy. The Tom Woods Show, he's a big-time libertarian. I don't understand why he's not moved towards anarchy. There's a lot of people get stuck in libertarianism and never quite make it to the full-blown voluntarism state.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if Tom Woods is still a libertarian because that's what that's his brand.
Makes money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he makes money from it. Writing books, and you can't fault him for it.
No, absolutely not.
But it really is kind of funny when you have those conversations with libertarians, and every anarchist is a libertarian, but not every libertarian is an anarchist, and they don't really get that.
Exactly.
Some of the other things that what I read, or I like listening to podcasts and YouTube videos, and the guy on Anarcast interviews a bunch of other anarchists, which leads me to seeing what they're doing on YouTube or seeing what they're doing on their channel. And he also talks a lot about cryptocurrency, so I'm always learning about what's cutting edge stuff that's happening in the crypto world, which could be an investment opportunity. So that's where I usually And I do still listen to terrestrial radio. I still listen to Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh on the radio. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I like to keep up with what's happening in the real world, or I don't know if you call it real, but it does give me a perspective. I have to have something to benchmark what I'm doing against where I came from.
All right, so that was all 4 questions. Okay, so that is the entirety of our interview, unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
No.
I had a good time, I'll say that.
Awesome.
Yeah, me too.
Jake, we loved having you, man. This was a really good event. You are our second guest, and we are really happy to have you on early, to have your message on for the entire length that our podcast will be available, hopefully for a long damn time.
Cool.
And it'll stay up on the site, and we are recording ahead of time now just to stay ahead of the game. So this will actually publish in about 3 weeks. So if you're listening to this the day it comes out, you're listening 3 weeks in the past or the future. I don't know how that works. I've had a couple too many drinks tonight.
Oh yeah, one of my buddies runs a podcast where he likes drinking beer. So he started a podcast on testing out beer, and now he gets free beer from all these different manufacturers of beer, which I think is kind of cool.
Nice.
Tough life.
Jake, how can people keep up with you, find out more, find out everything going on in the life of Jake? Tell us.
So you can go to my YouTube channel. I've got a lot of videos. I can't remember how many now, but I've got over 1.5 million views. I've got everything from gardening to permaculture to hacks on working on cards, that kind of thing. But I also have done a whole series of interviews with successful sellers on Amazon. That's one of the things I'm pursuing right now, starting an Amazon business. And last year, every week I interviewed guys that were selling hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. And I've developed a big following during that time frame. If you ever want to learn how to sell on Amazon, I've got probably some of the best information out there for free. You can just watch the interviews. They're usually about 2 hours long, and I wring every bit of information out of these guys, all their secrets, all their hacks, and how they make money. And it's on my channel. So it's Jake Robinson. I'm not sure if the YouTube channel has a special. I'm also on Facebook. Jake Robinson is my profile name. Hit me up on Facebook or YouTube.
Awesome.
All right. That's the episode. That's the end of episode 10. We'd like to thank our special guest, Jake Robinson, for hanging out with us tonight. And
thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, man. This was a good time. Thanks for listening, and we hope you tune in next week. If you found value in today's show, then please subscribe and follow us at the LibertyMastermindPodcast.com, the Liberty Mastermind Podcast on YouTube, at the Liberty 3 on Twitter, on iTunes, Google Play, and feel free to get involved on the comments section for today's show. Until next time, be alert, stay safe, and seek out liberty in everything you do.